Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1. Whether it's happening on the track, in the paddock, or beyond the grid, we'll talk about it all.
All right, here we are. Week 7.
Seven! Can you believe week 7?
I cannot believe that.
That's gone so fast.
It has. It has. So how are you? How has this week been for you so far?
It's been a really good week. I feel like I had so many things in my head that I wanted to talk about, but couldn't tell you what they are now. But I think this weekend, especially, I've been living vicariously through my son. Both of my kids were golfers, and he actually went to the Masters this week with his girlfriend. Yesterday, Friday, and Saturday. And when he was sharing in our family group text, I was like, "You can be there on moving day," which is what they call Saturday, because people tend to go up and down the leaderboard. So, yeah, living vicariously through him. He said he got me a hat, so I can't wait to see
That's
it.
exciting because you go to the Open in Phoenix a lot of times.
Yes, yeah. I did not go this year, but yes, we've been to a lot of tournaments. And with Randy, growing up, he played golf, and he had literally played junior golf rounds with like Scotty Scheffler, who I think is number 1 in the world. Xander Schauffele, he's played in tournaments with Colin Morikawa, like all in junior golf. So that was, at that age, the level that he was at, and he doesn't play as much now, but he can still go out there and hit under par. It's all muscle memory. So
Oh yeah, he was
just
amazing.
he was so good, still is good. But it was his birthday earlier this week, so I'm just excited for him. Super exciting birthday week for that kid. Dream come true.
I know. I can't believe our boys. Our boys are growing up. It's killing me.
No.
Speaking of boys, I got to, as you can tell, I'm in a different location, headsets and all, because I am actually back in the United States in Florida. Had to make a quick trip back to the States, and I get to see my boy. So I spent Friday at Disney, because he is a dancer at Disney. As you know, he's danced since he was 8 years old. So he performed I get to go see him doing his entertainment stuff on Friday, and I'm going to see it on Monday before I have to hop back on a plane and go back to Berlin. So it's been a little bit of an exhausting week from the long flights, but
Yeah.
so yeah, different location, headsets, because I don't have my mic and all that here, and all my
But
computers.
so worth it. So worth it
Oh,
to
yeah.
be back and see him and like just have that opportunity to just put your hands on him.
Oh
And
yeah, could see him and his fiance, because he got engaged right before we left, and see the house and the doggies, because we left his dog and another dog that we kind of bequeathed to him and his roommates that when we left and went to Germany. So we got to see the puppies. That was awesome.
nice whirlwind weekend. You're a jet setter.
Yeah, I'm a jet lagger, that's for sure. I don't know what day it is, what time it is. I don't know. And
That
we're
doesn't
recording
matter.
a day early, which is
We
really, I
are.
think, throwing me too. So
Yeah. I keep thinking tomorrow's Monday because we usually record on Sunday, but just because of the way like it's Easter and then you're traveling and you have plans tomorrow, we're like, let's do it on Saturday. So yeah, I get
yeah,
it.
we don't know which day it's up, but
No.
I think, but that it's befitting considering last week's race. I mean, everywhere I've been and talked about it, even the Slack group at my work, when I was said something about it, people were like, what happened? And I was like, oh my gosh, it was crazy. And it's just like it's
So
like the talk, like the chaos is just. So we're calming down. We're coming down. We have a lot to talk about. So I
we
guess we should
still
get
do.
into
It was,
it.
I think it was a super busy week. And I think, like you just said, because it was such a crazy race and there was so much, I don't know if I want to say controversy around it, but there was so much happening that, of course, like the fallout afterwards, there's going to be a lot of commentary from the peanut gallery and everybody else like about it. But I think for me, one of the things that I kept thinking of all week is because there's so many cars that are so close in pace, especially we've got all those, that midsection is bigger this year, I think. When something like this happens, where you have how many cars didn't finish? 8 cars did not
8.
finish. Finished out of the points. There's some cars that were probably out of position as far as points go. Um, what does that end up looking like, or how does that kind of affect our final, race driver standings at the end of the year? When you have people like Nico, who got 6 points, is now on par with Charles,
Yep.
with 6 points, and like there's going to be so few points to have. It's going to be such a fight, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's going to be such a fight all year to get points. How does a race like this shake that up?
Yeah, and what we were talking about earlier, just looking at the grouping of points, we've got a couple drivers with no points right now, a couple drivers, well, 3 drivers with 1 point. And that's Kevin, Alexander, and Yuki. And then you've got 2, Joe and Pierre are both at. No, sorry, Joe's at 2 points, but then look at 4. So you've got Pierre Gasly, Oscar Piastri, Esteban Ocon, and Valtteri Bottas all at 4 points. So they're just 2 points behind Charles and Nico. Like, just boom, 2 points.
Right, exactly.
So many.
Yeah.
And then it jumps. And you have George Russell. 8 points is Lando. And then it jumps up to George Russell with 18. But then he's really close to Lance Stroll's and Stroll and Carlos that are at 20. And then it jumps again with Lewis Hamilton at 38.
Well, then going back to Carlos, because remember in Australia, because of the 5-second penalty, he got 0 points and he was running in 4th place.
True.
If he had gotten, do you say he's tied with Lance? Because Lance ended up in 4th because of that. And so you give those points to Carlos and he's, that much further ahead. So that's where I'm thinking, and you can't control these kinds of races for the most part.
Yeah, because if he'd gotten 4th place, he would have gotten 12 points.
Yeah.
So if he'd done that, he would be, like I said, he got 0 points. If he'd gotten 12 points, then he would have been at, he would have been at 32 points.
Yeah.
So he would be right under Hamilton at 38.
Right.
And way above Lance.
I always wonder, how in America, in football, sometimes the players have things written into their contracts. If they, get this many touchdowns or whatever, then they get bonuses. And I don't know, honestly, how the F1 drivers' contracts are written. But, right below Hamilton and you're in the fight up there versus, okay, now you're down here and tied. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting because I feel like more than other years, this is a year where it is going to be really difficult to get points. It's going to be all over the place. So a race like what happened in Australia could make a huge difference.
It definitely could. And speaking of Australia, the red flags.
And
it's like that we mentioned last week, and I've talked to several people over the last week. The first race ever to have 3, right?
Yeah. So do we think? I think the biggest question is, and I have this written down for us, is do we think that they did that on purpose to kind of create some excitement or to make fans who maybe started watching with Drive to Survive to make them happy, as an entertainment thing?
I wonder because, it's a little boring in a little bit with them being out of the cars and sitting there because especially if you just turn in late, what are they doing? They're not in their cars. But then you get a little extra drama and stuff going on. The choices of how they restarted the race, I thought was really fascinating each time, right? And the impact that it did, because it did, especially at the very end, when you had, Max so many seconds ahead, and then when they restart, they're crammed right back up together. There's always a chance of somebody jumping ahead, because we noticed, and we talked about this, that he wasn't getting off the gate, immediately, really quickly.
Yeah.
Come on, at the very beginning, he was complaining that, the apex and all that stuff. But yeah, I wondered, and I had someone, even not even me, I didn't even bring it up. I had a gentleman friend of mine was saying that he thought kind of the same thing. He was wondering, because of the Netflix show, was some of the stuff that was going on kind of driven to help put extra drama or extra spin to get more people interested. I would hope not, because the race F1 has got so much strategy and technical, aspects and angles and complexities to it,
Yeah.
that I don't think it needs anything else,
Right.
honestly. You know, it muddies it up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would hope not. And I would think that hopefully they're just trying to give the drivers like a fair chance. So, okay, if everybody's caught up anyways, I don't know. I would hope that that's not the case. I'm going to
Yeah.
assume positive intent that they thought that that was the fairest way to do it. Um
I mean, I
and
get the gravel. The one with the gravel made sense, right? Because the
yes.
track was really messy. But there's it's one of them. I don't know why they did it, but at
Yeah.
least one of them.
Yeah. We'll have to see how it plays out in the future. I mean, I feel like hopefully they made the best decision for everybody.
Question, and we
Yeah.
didn't talk about this before, but it just dawned on me. Do you think, because I know they made a change to the Australia track, I believe, this past race anyway, do you think with as much trouble as they had out of that turn in this race, that they may reconsider how that turn is next year?
I think they didn't change it for this year. It was last year.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
I think that area was where I could totally be wrong, but I feel like that might be where they added the fourth DRS or around there. But when you think about where we kept having those issues, I don't think that DRS was a factor. I don't really
No,
know. I'd have
I
to.
just wonder if they would change the shape of that turn or anything or
Oh,
whatnot, because they had so many problems there.
yeah, I don't know. I think that the track in general has a lot of do not finishes generally. Like I think the
You're right.
average is 5, and so this time we ended up with 8. So I don't
Yeah.
know that they're going to change it. Maybe that's what makes Australia, kind of a fun race to watch. You just don't know what's going to happen. Like
Yeah,
who's going
there's a lot of partying, a lot of unknowns, and that's a good point because when I was looking last week investigating all the races that had the fewest finishers over like a 10-year period, Australia was in there the most oftentimes
to? Oh,
with the
interesting.
fewest finishers, so that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Well, let's get into talking about some of the teams. I think we have Mercedes
Yes.
up first.
So another thing that came out after Sunday was where was Mercedes after Lewis came into the podium, and not necessarily the podium, but like the pit area, because everybody else's teams was there to congratulate them, and they usually run and they hug. And I remember seeing one Mercedes person, pit crew, and Lewis saw him and they hugged. And I don't think I was like, well, where's everybody else? I just thought, well, who's that guy? Like, why is Lewis, hugging him and not like going and, how they do that? They go and they, cheer the rest of the pit crew. And then he went over to Kelly Slater, who is a surfer, and, was like, thank you. And then shortly after, somebody in an interview said, well, how are you feeling? How's your team feeling? And Lewis said straight out, I don't know how they're feeling. I haven't seen them. I don't know where they're at. And so, like, clearly he noticed that they weren't there either. And on Monday morning, when Mercedes posted something on their social media congratulating him, I always love to read the comments. I go straight to the comments, and everybody, there's hundreds of people. Where was the team? Why was the team not there? You need to release an official statement and tell us why the team was not there to congratulate Lewis. And it just kept going on and on and on. Everybody saying the same thing. So other people in the comments were saying, well, they were protecting their garage because of the track invasion that we talked about last week, and supposedly some F3 garages were being looted. I don't know if that's true or not true. But other people, and this seems more likely, is that they were all leaving to catch airplanes because the race took so long. They were running late for their flight. Supposedly George Russell was running through the paddock with his suitcase and all trying to make their flights. But that makes me think also, I went to my very first race, very first one last year in Austin. I did need to leave Sunday after the race, but I was smart enough to think if the race goes long or it takes me a while to get to the airport, I need to go like on the latest flight that I possibly can. So you're telling me
Yeah.
that you scheduled everybody when you know this is a race that has a lot of DNFs and all of that stuff, that most of your team was all running to the airport.
And see, that really shocks me. I'm surprised that for races that they're just not there that night and leave the next morning, because there's pressers, there's all kinds of stuff to do and to wrap up, and that really blows my mind. Plus, you would think that a lot of people are be like stalking at the airport, like let the fans get out of there, let them get out of Dodge, and then let the rest of the teams get that. I mean, I travel for work, and I would never cut it. You try not to cut it so close to a meeting that if a meeting's going to run over or you're needed, that's wow.
And I think you would plan for the worst case scenario, like the race, rain, it could be rain delayed. There's a whole bunch of things that have delayed races in the past, right? So why are you cutting it that close when your hope is that your drivers are on the podium? I get that you want to get home. It seemed like everybody was like Esteban and Gasly. We talked about them. They were on their plane straight away. Fernando was like he was literally during the press conference with the 3 podium sitters, like telling them, I got to get going. Like, don't answer. Don't do long answers. That's what he was telling Lewis and Matt. I got to go. So I get that, but nobody could stay behind. That is, to me, was like, so I'm just frustrated by that. I don't get it. But anyways, so Lewis, I think we mentioned this last time. It makes him the first F1 driver to have gotten on a podium in 17 seasons, consecutive seasons. I am like,
that's amazing
today. Yeah, consecutive seasons. So I believe his first podium was in Australia, his very first year. And I think it was his first race, to tell you the truth. He got 3rd place. So I think that's pretty exciting. And I think, like, when you realize like how much this sport is expanding, and I totally get that there's more races than ever before, but I think it's really cool to see some of these records like breaking, like we're seeing history being made, and in the future people will talk about, these records.
Is his dad at all the races? Because I noticed his dad was at this race.
I don't know if he's at all of them, but he's at a lot of them. Yeah.
It was neat that his dad could experience that with him then. At least his dad was there to celebrate.
Yes, exactly. Hopefully he wasn't on a flight home.
Right. I'm making assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. But I did see an interview that he did with Fox Sports, and he did talk about his dad and talked about, how they kind of worked together to get where he is. So I think it's cool that his dad is there. But to hear him talk about just like, I guess it's like a champion mindset, right? Like, he decided as a little kid that his goal was always to win, and he sees 2nd place as a failure. But I just think, like, and I know we don't always, 2nd place shouldn't be a failure, like, but at the same time, like, that determination that he puts on himself to be that good. That's why he is a 7-time, hopefully 7-time champion.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about, right? I'm gonna mention the quote because I think it's funny, but the quote from the NASCAR racing movie, for Ricky Bobby, which has an F1 driver come right and race, right? That's what that's all about. But I think it's from F1. I think it's right anyway. But if you're not first, you're last. It's at the whole beginning of the movie. That's all he lives by at the end. His dad's like, what does that even mean? There's 2nd, there's 3rd, hell, there's 17th, but he's just like, but yeah, because one of the things I found fascinating about the sport, when you introduced me to it, got me like all jazzed and everything, was that I love the competition within the entire spread, right? That there's goals and whatnot to try to get in the middle of the pack and whatnot, that there's like everyone recognizes where they're at and where they're trying to go. It's kind of like in work and business, I'm always with my team working on trying to set SMART goals. Now there's an acronym for that, but 2 of the ones are really important, the A and the R, and it's attainable and reachable. And I think that's so cool because they look at it and go, hey, we know our car's not going to be number 1, but we really want to strive to get better. And so we were 10th last year. We want to try to get 7th or 8th. They really set those goals and make them where they work for them. So it's not like, oh, if you're not number 1, if you're not winning the cup every year, you suck. I like that because it shows people that improvement's good. And I think I mentioned it to you too, that quote, I think it's by Mark Twain, that continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection.
Yes.
I really like that concept of, it's not that everybody gets a trophy and everybody gets a ribbon, but it's that we recognize the effort and the work of continuously improving and the boundaries of what we have, and trying to work within the struggles and everything we've got at this situation and working toward it, right? Not giving
Yeah.
up, keep trying. And I think I get that he does that for some personal self. I just don't want it to be set in, because kids look up to these guys as role models, right? To be like, oh, if I don't ever win, I'm horrible. Like, we don't want to have that
Right.
be taken in a negative. It's kind of
I
mama bear in it a
no,
little bit.
I totally agree with you, because I think that when you don't get first, and especially in a situation like with the drivers, and you're carrying your side of the garage, right? Especially in the team on you. And so when there is a mistake that's made, or you're not finishing in first, I just feel that weight on their shoulders, leaving the track, and then, until the next time, that's a lot, like, to put on somebody's mental health. So
with your son, who's an elite golfer, and he wasn't always winning all the tournaments, and what that would feel like. And my son was an elite dancer, competitor, and he would put it all out and not always get up there. In fact, often not, but he would score well. And so it's still a lot that they put on this, especially if they're part of a team and trying to bring a team up, and like team scoring and whatnot. So
exactly,
it's tough. But anyway, we could go on and on about that, pontificating and being mama-ing and all that. But you had some other interesting things about Mercedes, some that I'm not as familiar with. So
speaking of like the team, they are bringing some changes to Baku about the suspension. I know one thing that Lewis has been saying is that he is sitting too far forward in the car, and so he's not able to feel like the rear of the vehicle. And not being an F1 driver, I don't know exactly what that feels like, but that's a big thing. If you don't know what's happening kind of with the back of your car, that could be an issue. But they're also bringing some different suspension components that they hope will kind of balance the car out. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of, like, maybe even more speed. Like, I think they were impressive in Australia, but maybe with some cars that they feel the drivers think are more drivable, maybe we'll see even more from them. So I think that's really fun. And then before we get to like a bigger topic with Mercedes, Total Wolff made the Forbes billionaire list on the sports side. Like, hello, I think
he's not hurting for anything.
And what cracks me up is I did that little Pedro munching on a sandwich thing. Like, what do you call those? Like a TikTok reel. Like,
yeah.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of views and likes. It is cracking me up that something that simple with a picture of Toto that says Forbes billionaire on it is like going crazy. Cracks me up. But good for him. He owns, well, we know he's the CEO. He's the team principal for Mercedes AMG. He owns 33% of that team. He has a stake in Aston Martin. He's got a lot of stuff going on. So, you don't necessarily have to finish college, because he dropped out of university, and look where he's at now. He's a billionaire. So
there you go.
So that's kind of cool, but not as much fun is Felipe Massa is considering taking legal action to contest Lewis's first driver world champion. It's craziness. And we don't want to go into it too much, because I was telling Claire, like, it's called Crashgate. You can Google it and get some more info on it. It happened back in 2008, a really, really long time ago. But it's one of those stories that we could literally probably do a whole podcast on it, because there's so many little side things, and we can go down all these different rabbit holes talking about all this stuff. But basically what happened at the Singapore race in 2008, Nelson, I don't know how you say their name, Piquet Jr. Piquet might sound familiar because his dad was a driver. He was also just fined a bunch of money for racist comments towards Lewis Hamilton. His sister, Nelson Jr.'s sister, is Max Verstappen's girlfriend. So you might have heard the last name. It's, famous in F1. But anyways, he was driving for Renault, and Renault told him he needed to crash his car on purpose. And basically it was to give his teammate, who at the time was Fernando Alonso, an advantage in that race. And Fernando went on to win the race. Lewis Hamilton and Felipe were the rivalry for the championship. Lewis got third, and Felipe finished outside the points. So, okay, we find out down the road a little while later that this happened. I think the team principal or managing director at Renault was suspended for life, banned for life from Formula One. The engineer director was banned for 5 years. I think he's now an engineer director for FIA or F1. But they kind of supposedly buried the fact that they knew that this was a planned thing. And at the time, it was said they didn't want to bring unnecessary criticism or bad PR to F1. And that just came out last month in an interview. The CEO at that time, he's 90 something now, did an interview, and it came out, and Felipe saw it and said, wait a second, they knew about it and they decided not to investigate right away. They did investigate later on, but not right away. And so therefore, Lewis was crowned the champion by 1 point. And according to their rules, knowing that something like that had gone on, the whole Singapore race should have just been tossed out, which would have had Felipe winning by 5 points. So it's going to be interesting. Again, we'll probably talk about it from time to time as, maybe this kind of works its way through. But it's definitely something we had to bring up. Again, you might need to go and look. There's so many other,
There's so much
mail and all kinds of other like stuff that goes along with this. But yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me about it. The only thing I have to say that we won't belabor it because we've got so much more to go, and already halfway through our normal timing. 15 years. It's just like 15 years, and I get it's because that's what the CEO said, and I don't know if he's a former CEO, if he's a little senile. Do they really know? Is it? But again, it's 15 years, and it's like how that didn't come out 15 years ago, especially with the person who made all the allegations and whatnot. To come up with those kind of allegations, you would think he would have said that back then, So it's just 15 years. Is there no statute of limitations in all the rules of FIA that they can go back and wipe a race out 15 years later? So I'm gonna say it one more time: 15 years.
I guess not. And I think what's sad is yes, maybe allegedly Felipe, could have had a world championship, but at the same time, Lewis also didn't have anything to do with any of this, and he won. Yeah. And if you take that away, which I don't know how you could do that at this point, but if you take that away, then he is 1 championship behind Schumacher. So he's no longer 7-time champion. He would be a 6-time champion. And I don't know how you do that, but that's why we wanted to bring it up, because I think this is going to continue on, even if it's just, something that here's some new info, or this info came out, or here's their final decision. We just wanted to, I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the future. So we needed to bring it up.
I'm sure we will. All right. Well, let's get into some of the other teams before we.
I know we can probably fly through some of the stuff. So, Martin, I think there's 2 main questions. Is one, do we think they were surprised by Mercedes' speed in Australia? And 2, are we still on the hype train? We're 3 races in, and in my head, I was kind of after the 3rd race, I'm going to decide if I'm still on the hype train.
So for me, I don't know if they were surprised. I'm still learning enough. Y'all will admit, still learning, being new to all this, is I don't get their strategy. I don't get I get so anxious. I've been anxious all 3 races, and almost screaming at my iPad because that's what I watched the race on. Brenda, don't push it. Why you're not trying to get further up, and just almost settling for 3rd. I mean, you're on the podium, but there's so many more points, and there's just so much more, and then and so it just, I don't know. I don't know if there was a surprise. I mean, he did talk about how he was trying to get Hamilton to make a mistake, and it was really very respectful of the things that he was saying. I really like that, that he was going back and forth about that. But I don't know if it was a surprise, but to me, a hype train, it's kind of hard to stay. I mean, I adore the guy. I really enjoyed watching him during one of the red flags that he was dragging his own tires down the way, and helping the team really, really part of the team. That like we always would tell our son that when he was dancing, it doesn't matter if you're the stage director or the janitor, everybody matters. So it was just really
Yes.
cool to see him, doing his part. But yeah, I need him to start like effort, more push, more drive, more like striving to do that, because I don't. It's almost like they're like, as long as we get third, we're good. We're happy, and so I'm having a hard time being hyped.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say about
I
that.
think I'm still hyped that they're up there. I don't know right now that anybody's going to catch Red Bull. I'm not like 100% on that because I still think we've got so many races to go. But I do think that there are definitely times where you're second or third and you're getting towards the end of the race and you just are like, okay, let's just finish the race, right? Like, we're not going to catch them. Our tires are, graining or whatever. And we want to at least finish. We don't want something to happen where we're not finishing at all. So I still think they're up there. I want to see him a little bit higher. And I would bet at some point Fernando will be on the top of the podium.
I
I
hope so.
see that happening. And that's exactly what Papa Stroll has been telling your guy, Crack, um, Principal Crack.
Be messing with my crack.
You're so naughty.
I love his name. I love his name. I'm gonna have
But
so much
he
fun
has
with it.
been telling him, like, when are we going to win? When is that going to happen? Like, I think his 5-year plan went to a 5-month plan at this point because he sees how competitive they are compared to everybody else right now. And he is like itching for that win, which I totally get. And we haven't seen any upgrades from them just yet. But I think from what I have read, they should be having some stuff coming in the next few races. So I don't know if that'll be Baku, if that's going to be in Miami. Like, I'm not sure yet, but that's such a good point, is like, we haven't seen upgrades from them yet. And so they're fast now. Like, that could definitely take them to the next level. So I just think they're very exciting for sure.
Well, you've covered my favorite team. Let's cover yours.
So Ferrari.
Mm.
The biggest thing I think that came out of Ferrari this week is Fred finally put in a petition to contest or have a review of Carlos's penalty, the 5-second penalty, which pushed him from 4th place to 12th, out of the points, all of that stuff. So I'm going to read a little bit of what he said. Is that they're discussing it. He doesn't want to discuss a lot of the details, but then went on to say, but what about Ocon and Gasly? What about Sargent and De Vries? Like, all of that happened on turn 1. It's the reaction, or he was saying the reaction of the stewards was not the same. So it should be considered like a racing incident. That's what they said for Gasly and Ocon. That's what they said for De Vries and Sargent. So why is Carlos's not? Now, I know your feelings on it. Like, he set off the chain and there was cars that did not, finish. But I think that what I agree with him is, like, if it's going to be this, then it should be that way all across the board.
No, I agree. I think it should have been all the way across the board. And what I don't get is the comments that I've seen so far is like, for Gasly, is like, oh, well, it saved him from being banned. Well, it's a year's worth of points. I mean, you've got to be careful, right? And you've got Carlos, who's got 0. I mean, that shows how good of a racer and how well he performs and what he was doing things right. And you can see why he was so upset. It's like when you do things right so often,
right,
and then it seems so egregious out of the thing, and he didn't get a chance to make his say his piece or defend his point, and others did. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree. There's definitely some unfairness in it. I just, to me, it's like apply it all the way across or don't, and unless they can come up and don't. Like I said, the only difference I could see as an outsider was the aftermath to other drivers, the and the level of effect to the number of drivers versus, the how it impacted the individual driver who got penalized. So
yeah.
that's like the only difference I saw. But I don't. if that's not the rules, then
Right.
it doesn't matter. What are the
Right.
rules, But then again, we've talked about the rules don't seem to always.
They don't. And I think that that's one of the things is like, okay, the first turn, they tend to let things slide a little bit more because you've got 20 cars all pushing, and you can't always help where your car goes. And I do think that with Carlos, that was the case. Like, also they had the sun coming in their eyes there. So I think if the others are all racing incidents, and to me still, like, Logan Sargent's is the most egregious, because if you watch that, he plows into the back of, like, you can't, I mean, I know they're going quick, and I think his tires locked up is what he said. His front tires had locked up and there wasn't anything he could do, but like, I mean, they teach you that in safety class driving.
Well, you bring up a good point too. It made me think too. If we take that, when I was saying about Carlos having no penalties at that point on his license in the 12 months compared to Pierre, right? If we think about that and the intent and the level of driving, Carlos was driving with the best intent and doing, and he's got a track record of doing things the right way,
Right.
as compared to a Gasly, who obviously has point after point after point on him,
Yeah.
who has a more of a track record of not doing things as proper as they should, right? So why would you penalize the driver who does things more properly and not the driver who doesn't? Oh,
Right.
because it's going to ban him. Well, that's why you have the rule. They don't have the rule.
Right. I agree. Part of me does wonder, we could talk about that in just a second, but like, even with Logan, like, he didn't get any points and he went straight into the back of somebody and knocked De Vries right out of the race as well. But anyway, like, we could go on and on about that. So I'm kind of interested to see what comes out. So I guess they have to decide if they want to reopen the case. And then they'll have a hearing with the same stewards. And then the actual decision is what he was saying. And they're hoping that they can have that meeting before Baku, but it might be at Baku. It just depends, I guess, on how that comes out. But then, if it's going to be so interesting to see what they decide, because if they decide to say, okay, we should not have done that, like, maybe Carlos didn't deserve the 5-second penalty because we didn't give it to anybody else, then there's ramifications on the points. And then we go back to what we started with in this section, which is the points are going to be hard to come by. So everybody drops down, right? Yuki's out of the points. Lance goes down.
Nico,
he had 6 points. Like,
he would drop to 4, right? He would get only 4.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be so interesting to see, because I don't know if they will just stick to their guns so they don't have to deal with all the other teams coming at them now that they've lost their points again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, anyways, so that was that. And then McLaren,
your favorite.
McLaren's been busy. So we know Zach Brown has been talking, basically, I feel like since testing, that they have upgrades coming in Baku. So yay, can't wait to see what the upgrades are like. But Zach Brown came out this week and said, well, because of the type of track that is, you may not see the effects of the upgrades at this race. So who knows? But both Oscar and Lando were doing testing towards the middle to the end of this week. I haven't seen anything about them saying anything about the car or how it feels or anything along those lines. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see the actual actions.
And all the speculation on that, either it was really good, they don't say anything, it was really bad, they don't say anything. All right, there's nothing,
So you know what? We'll let the car speak for itself on track next time. But talking about going back to Gasly, so talking about the race ban, one of the questions that's been in my mind is, do we think that they are avoiding giving him points? Because towards the end of last year, I think it was something super petty, but normally he would have gotten points for this, and they didn't give it to him because it would have resulted in a ban. But are they avoiding giving him the points so they don't have to give him a ban?
I don't know. That's what I was wondering. It's like, I mean, because if they ban, how long of a ban would it be? I don't know about that. Is it a race the rest of the
I,
season?
no, I thought it was a race, a one race ban.
One race. So then they have a third driver. I'm like, I mean, that's why you have a third driver, right? So, um, I don't know. It's interesting. And it's like, is it again, is it to add more drama because it just adds more controversy, or were some of the points last year questionable enough in the last 12 months that they're like, oh, we're making up for that, but
That could be
then
because I think some were petty. I know there was one he didn't get. Then he got a speeding in the pit lane, which is a big no-no. But I mean, that wasn't a racing like. But at the same time, you know the rules. You've been in the sport forever. Like,
mm,
so I
yeah.
don't know. I think that'll
And
be
like you
another.
said, this one, yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then yeah, it'll be interesting.
I think so. But I will say this for Alpine. They did got a lot of outpouring because they obviously both cars did not finish the race
That
in
was so sad,
Australia.
man.
And so we commented on their post when they, were like, oh, not the race that we hoped for. And they made a whole other social media post thanking their fans. And what our comment was one of like 30 that were included. So like,
That's
thank
so
you,
exciting for us. Yes, thank you, Alfie. That's so exciting.
thank you, Alfie.
Um,
Like, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, we'd mentioned about Sargent running into the back of De Vries, so that was that. So then, that's like, oh, we're down to Red Bull then. Cool. I think we're
Red Bull.
Red
Yeah,
Bull.
they have won the first 3 races. 2 for Max, 1 for Checo.
Well,
It's going to happen. I was asking Claire this before is like, do we think that some of the other teams are starting to catch up to them? And then I thought to myself, that's just more wishful thinking. It's more wishful thinking.
I don't want him to. I don't want him to sweep the entire season, though. I mean, we talk about maybe Alonso getting on podium, and was it going to take their both cars to be out to do that, or have penalties? Like, what is it going to take? It's like, is it going to be that they don't start pole in Monaco, and then that's how we do it? Like, how are we going to get it to where
A double DNF? I don't even know.
I
Like,
don't know.
it's going to be crazy. And I think, we were talking about Aston Martin bringing or McLaren bringing changes to Baku. We know Mercedes, we talked about them bringing some changes over the next few races, but we haven't really heard anything about Red Bull bringing any upgrades. And it's like, if they're already this fast, what's going to happen if they do bring upgrades?
Yeah, it would be that great. Or is there a peak? And have they reached the peak, right? Because there's only so much you can do with the limitations of the rules and whatnot.
Yeah.
I mean, are they at the top? Are they already at the peak of what you can do within? And I don't know the rules, and I don't know if there's any limitations in the engineering or anything like that that would cap the performance, or they could, because you can only get so good, right? There's only so much with technology and whatnot that you can get to. So
Yeah.
have they reached the peak? Have they reached the peak of what the engineering can do with what we can have at their disposal? I don't know.
I doubt it. And I wish I could remember which driver said this, but somebody said they have the feeling that they're not even using their full potential right now because they're so much faster than everybody else. They don't have to. But what I think is interesting is that their main designer, who could obviously be, or maybe not obviously, I say obviously a lot, who could arguably be called the best or most successful car designer in F1 history, Adrian Newey, his contract is coming up. And so, we talk about like this car that he's created and supposedly he's out there. He was looking at the Mercedes front wing 2 races ago, standing there just looking at it. So he is constantly trying to figure out, how do we make this car better? How do we make it better? I'm just curious, like, if other teams are wooing him.
Yeah, and wanting to pay some, pay some money for. I could see Zach Brown doing that.
Oh, yes. Or Lawrence Stroll.
Yeah.
Stroll. Yep. I could see either one of them. Like, I can pay you.
Go for it, Papa Stroll. Bring him over.
Bring him over.
Help my man.
Ferrari needs to do that, but I don't see that happening. We're doing. But anyways,
The only other thing I could think of with Red Bull is just between Max and Checo. I wonder if that the inner workings between them could cause any kind of downfall later in a race too.
it could get contentious, right? Like
Yeah.
it's happened before. But I mean, they seem to be okay. They're, I feel like when they're not even on camera, if they're around each other, they're talking and, there's some laughter. And so, but I think it could turn on a dime. That's my personal feeling. I think
I do too. I think Checo's the bigger man in that. Speaking of Checo.
Yeah.
We were talking about this.
Yes. So grid basics, we figured for this week, we're going to do like a 2-part grid basics. So this week, we're going to just kind of go over like some terms and some acronyms, because there's things, especially if you're new to the sport, you may not know what that means. And you're sitting there like, what are they talking about? And
it extends to players. It extends to players to racers.
Yes. And so I was telling Claire, when I was fairly new to watching the sport, I watched a race, and I can't remember if Checo won or what the deal was, but they were like, Sergio Perez, he must have won the race. He's the winner. And then I was on social media and it was Checo this and Checo takes that. And I'm like, who the F is Checo? Like, Sergio Perez won the race. Like, what are they talking about? So I finally had to go Google it. And then I realized, oh, Sergio Perez and Checo are the same person. Checo, it's a nickname.
And it took me too, because what I'm still I'm trying to get better about remembering names and whatnot. And it took me a little bit too. I was like, who's this Checo person? Is it Checo Perez or is it Sergio Perez? Do I have his name wrong? And they're like, oh, it's the same. Oh, it's all. Okay. All the names work. Yeah. All the names.
Yeah. So I think I had read initially that and maybe it's just in his region where his family's from, but that's if your name's Williams, they'll call you Bill or, something along those lines. So apparently that's a typical nickname for somebody named Sergio. My mom lives in Mexico. She's like, I've never heard that before. So that's why it kind of made me think maybe it's more of a regional thing. But anyways, there's your very first grid basics, terms and acronyms. Checo and Sergio Perez are, in fact, the same person.
Yeah. So, but that does bring us to, so one of the ones, I'm going to go down the list because I like the list to do, is when the first thing you said, we had to get going and you get to check out the livery. And I'm like, the what? The livery? The livery? What? Like, why? What is that? And it took me forever to figure out. I still don't understand why they use the term livery, but the livery. So when they reveal the new color scheme of the car, it's not always the car. Usually it's not the actual car, right? But it's kind of give you an idea of what the car is going to look like, at least when the color schemes.
Yes, the design, the color scheme, all of that stuff. I think livery is just a very English word. So probably going back to proper English racing and all of that stuff. And I do remember, I remember saying to you, are you not watching the livery launches? Like, what are you doing? So yes, the livery is really just kind of like the style, the design of the actual car, right?
And I had to look it up. Livery, the definition, special uniform worn by a servant or official.
No, there's got to be a second one.
That's the main one. That's the main one. But then it says a special design and color scheme used on vehicles, aircraft, or products of a particular company.
There you go. There we go. I'm like, there's got to be a second definition. Come on, Merriam-Webster. Yeah.
All right. The next one I thought was interesting. For the longest, funniest thing, I'm telling this because I consider myself to be up on grammar, but constructors. So it's like the longest. I'm like, why do they keep calling it constructors? Like, oh yeah, they construct the cars.
Yes. So
it's so on the nose that I just
right over the head. Yes. So that's exactly it. The constructor is the team. So when you see the constructor points, that's like which team has the most points. It's the constructor. And so you do get points every race. And you will see the constructor also get an award on the podium. So there's the 3 drivers, and then you see somebody from the team, from the pits, is up there taking the constructor award also. So they get points. If your cars finish up there, you get points. And that's a big thing, because if your team finishes the constructor, especially at the top, usually like the whole, like the office, the crew, the pit crew, everybody gets a bonus. So the drivers are really gunning for getting those constructor points and winning the constructor for the entire year. So yeah, that's what that is.
That's awesome. All right, now we've got some acronyms. You've got, we'll start in the order it happens. You have FP1, FP2, there's FP3,
Yes. So
right?
FP1, FP2, FP3 stands for free practice number 1, free practice number 2, free practice number 3. On Fridays, you have FP1 and FP2, and on Saturday morning, you have FP3. So
that brings you into Qs, right? Then on Saturday, we go into Qs.
Yep. So the Qs is for qualifying. So qualifying stage 1, qualifying stage 2, qualifying stage 3. So Q1, Q2, Q3. Q3 is where every driver wants to be. It's the last stage. It's only 10 drivers that make it that far. And that sets the first 10 grid spots. So you want to be on the pole position, which we can just go right into that. People are like, what does pole mean? So pole is number 1. You had the absolute fastest time in Q3, qualifying stage 3. And so you are sitting in the first spot. Your car, sometimes that's on the outside, sometimes it's on the inside. I think it depends on the track, but your car is a little bit more in front on that front row than the person that qualified second. So
yeah, because if you look at the grid, they're all offset just a little bit, and then it goes into like the P's. And I've noticed that the P number is the position you are in line in the race right now, and so you start off P1 through P20, and P1 is pole. But as you're going, you'll hear them tell the racers over where they're at. You're P7, P3, they don't even say they just say P7, da 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 da. Like they know what that means. And so the racers then know where they are in the race, and so you hear that audibly being spoken often. So that I hear that a lot.
Exactly, and you will hear it for the race itself, but also in qualifying. So sometimes the drivers, and especially because in Q3 drivers are coming over that line after it's counted down to 0, but they're still within their rights to finish their lap, and then you hear them come over the radio like P7 or P1, and sometimes the drivers will be very surprised. During the race, I don't think they're as surprised, but during qualifying, they're very surprised to find out where they are. So,
okay, now the one that I thought was always interesting is box. I hear that all the time, like box, box, box. I hear push and box. So explain where box comes from. I get what this. You tell people what they're doing, but where it comes from is interesting too.
Yeah, so I don't know that I'll say this right, but it comes from the German Boxenstopp. I'm like Boxenstopp. I don't know. I don't have a German accent.
Boxenstopp.
Boxenstopp, so it's a pit stop. So they shorten it because that's too long to say during a race, probably. And so it's just box, 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 box. And so when you hear that, they're telling the driver, you need to come into the pits. Like we think you need new tires right now, or maybe if they've had a little bit of a bump or a crash or, whatever, like we need you to box. We need to take care of something. And sometimes you'll hear the drivers push back and say, no, I don't want to box. I'm doing fine. So
I thought that was interesting. I never knew about me moving to Germany. So it's nice to know that it's box and stop. And that just says being pit stop.
Yeah,
that's a little better than pit. Better. It sounds a little nicer than saying pit, 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 pit. I like box.
Yeah, pit, pit, pit. That sounds terrible. Yeah, no.
I know. Could you imagine being on the radio and having to say pit, pit, pit?
Yeah.
Box sounds so much better. Box, box.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You can be more authoritative, I think, with box. But yeah, so those are just a few like little F1 terms and acronyms. But next week we'll get into some more like bigger concepts like dirty air and under, DRS and understeering and all of that kind of stuff. Those are going to be a little bit more intense. Like we need to spend a little bit of time on it. So yeah.
Well,
so next week,
coming in, we're oh goodness, we've been talking a lot. There's been a lot to talk about. Australia just kicked us off. So we
Yes.
can wrap these up pretty quickly. Some beyond the grid. There's been some neat stuff that's been going on. Starting with the helmet. That helmet is up to you. Just checked a little bit ago for Valtteri's helmet, the Aussie helmet. It was
Yes. Oh,
20,000 pounds. Oh, that was an interesting sound.
I know. I'm sorry. If you guys are hearing that, I'm so sorry. Hopefully Claire can work her magic. But I have a little dog, and it can't even be. It's almost time for him to eat. He likes to eat promptly at 5 p.m. And if I don't start preparing his food at 4:30, this is what we get. So I apologize ahead of time for any little whining that you're hearing.
We're almost done. So anyway,
Okay.
so yeah, it was at 20,000 pounds, which is almost
Yes.
25,000 US dollars or 22,000 euros.
Yeah, so we
Amazing.
talked last week about Valtteri's special helmet that was created. It was designed by an Aboriginal artist, and his sole intent was to auction it off after the race through F1 Authentics and raise money for more Aboriginal charities. So yeah, like Claire said, it's over 20,000 pounds, 25,000 US dollars. Like
US dollars.
very,
It's
very
crazy.
cool. Very cool.
All right, what else do we have? Red Bull.
So-
and then Red Bull is having a contest to design Checo's helmet, so that's cool.
Yeah, so for Checo's home race in Mexico, which is more towards the end of the season, but if you have mad design skills, and again, I wish I did, go ahead and submit a design, and maybe Checo will be wearing your helmet, which I love that they're doing this, because we talked one of our very first episodes how for the US races, you can submit a design and that will be used as the livery, which we just learned is the color scheme and the design of the actual, colors and layout of the car. And that's coming up in Miami. So 2 more races and we'll get to see the very first fan designed livery for Red Bull. I'm excited.
So exciting. Yeah, I mean too. Well, then you have, let's see, we've got we have some other fun stuff. Oh, I saw this where Fernando announced his new personal care line for men. I almost think I need to order it for my partner just so I can say I ordered something from Fernando. Yeah. But
I know. I was kind of like, what? I mean, here's the thing. I love it. It's all natural. It's plant derived. It's sustainable packaging. Like, I love all of that. And he was saying in the video that is very, very important to him. And so I love it. But like, what is going on? I mean, there was a line from a movie before I became an F1 fan, and it was talking about like the people that wear all their logos everywhere, right? So they're head to toe Gucci or head to toe like whatever. And the line was something about like, you're like an F1 driver, because they've got their sponsors everywhere, on their stuff. And it's like, what is happening now? So they have their car sponsors, but now you've got Fernando doing a men's care line. Charles is hawking sparkly jewelry with giant teddy bears. Yeah. He looks very good in the ads, but I am not understanding the giant teddy bear necklaces. I don't know if it's for women, if it's for men, if it's for like what is. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, what is happening?
I don't get that either. But the only thing I can think of is Fernando. I mean, he's been racing for a while. Maybe he's trying to set himself up for like retirement and post this. But the thing with Charles, Charles, that was interesting. What else do we have? You and Nick De Vries and his legs.
Okay, listen. I'm just saying, like, when I see Nick De Vries, he just looks skinny, like tiny. But the last couple weeks, he's been posting videos of himself working out. And you all just need to go to his page and look at it. His quads are like so muscly, so formed, like they're like separated from the rest of his leg. Like he is pure muscle. And he might be like, well, he might not even be small at all. But to me, he looks like he's small. He is pure muscle.
He can still be thin like that. There's a lot of ballet dancers that are like that. They're very thin and very sleek, but they're cut so well that you can actually see all 4 muscles of the quad, right? So you can actually count the muscle and whatnot. Yeah,
and that's what it reminded me of, because Zach is like Claire's son, like she mentioned earlier, is a dancer, and I feel like his legs are cut.
Cut like that, but big. But his were always big. He at one point his quad measured bigger than his waist, but
that's what
not anymore, but
Yeah, but that's what his legs look like. It is crazy to me. And I don't know if I just, so if you're fairly new listening, like I broke my my pinky metacarpal thingy right here on my hand. And so this past week and a half I've been able to go back to the gym and actually like, do stuff with my hand. So I don't know if it's just something I'm just more aware of, like gym type stuff, posts and those sorts of things. But yeah, all I'm saying is just go look and then report back.
Go
Like,
look.
yeah.
On the
That's
last couple of ones we were talking about, because we're hitting an hour already on this one, girl.
I can't believe it.
Sargent and Williams rang the closing bell in the stock exchange. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know different groups go in there and do that. They'll ring it to open or, to close it. And so I'm not sure if there was something special that they were doing. I don't think that they like launched on the New York Stock Exchange, right? Like I could be wrong. I don't know. But yeah, they were there and rang the bell and he was all decked out in his Williams gear, but being from America, the only American driver on the grid right now, I thought that was kind of a cool thing for him to be there doing. Not something
that might
everybody.
have been some of it, but yeah, it's interesting. Since he's the only one on the only one, that's probably part of it. But
yeah, I think that's part of it. Well, and I guess too that they have an office in New York because they just hired a new, like, I don't know, accountant executive. I don't even want to say the title because I don't know what it is. And they said he was going to be in their New York office. And I was like, I didn't even know Williams had a New York office. Perfect. I need to start trying to get a job there. And then I'll work my way overseas. But yeah, anyways, I thought that was kind of fun. So
we're going to get you here.
Yeah. One thing that I definitely want to start doing, and we're going to start doing with our podcast, is reading out some of the 5-star reviews that we get online. So if you have been following us, if you haven't done a review, if you haven't rated us, please go out there and do that. Just periodically, we'll pick one. Maybe it'll be yours. You never know. But we're very excited about how our little podcast is growing. It's been a lot of fun, and Claire knows, like, as long as our numbers go up every week, then I'm cool. But I get totally jazzed about the countries because Claire handles all of the, like, that side of things. And
we're at 15 countries now. 15 countries. We're all over. It's amazing. And so we're in the Americas, Europe, down in Asia Pacific with Australia and New Zealand. And we're in Africa. Like, oh my gosh. It's amazing to see how far we are all over the place. So yeah. I'm so excited.
If we could just get somebody in Antarctica, I think we'd have all the continents, wouldn't we? Because we have Americas, we have Africa, we've got Asia, we've got Europe, right?
We don't have Asia. We don't have Asia.
Wait, didn't we have somebody?
It was Singapore. Singapore. Yeah, we do have Asia. Sorry, we do have Singapore.
Yeah. So
yeah,
yay!
You're right.
I love that. And then when she breaks it down,
exciting.
All the countries and stuff, I get jazzed. And then you can break it down further from there and just see like what cities they're in. So we have, obviously the majority is the US, which is awesome. But it just blows my mind. And Berlin, of course. But it just blows my mind to see that, like when she says, oh, Singapore or Kenya, like what?
Yeah, and we recently picked up Mexico and Australia and the United Kingdom. So that's really exciting to see that. I mean, where some of the racers are from. Like, we're picking up from the countries that the racers are in. So,
which is great. So thank you. Please keep listening. Please tell other people about us. We're trying to grow as organically as possible. So even, if you're listening, but you don't follow us on like Instagram or TikTok, which I'm trying to figure out TikTok, go and follow us there as well, because we do post, and we're not going to be buying bots or anything like that. We'd rather have people that are really engaging with us. So thank you for that.
Yep. Yes, we appreciate that. So like we said, we recorded this week on a Saturday because of the holidays and travel. Next week, I think we're going to record maybe on a Monday just because of other kinds of stuff and family and whatnot, but always publishing on Tuesday. So you guys are hearing this after we've pushed it out on a Tuesday. And again, thank you for everybody. We got a few more weeks before the next race, so more education, and in between we do education, we can do more grid basics, and we're going to spotlight a team. We're going to start spotlighting a team in between races too, so we can just spend a lot of time concentrating on just one team and learning all about their history and where they're at and where they're going. I think that'll be cool too.
Yeah, definitely. So come along for the ride with us. We love it.
Thanks for sticking it out for this longer one. It's been fun. It's us best friends. It's hard time to keep it short when two best friends are talking, right? So
I know we can seriously go on and on and on, but you guys are probably hearing little pause, and I apologize. Like,
I keep looking at my phone because I'm getting messaged like, we want to order pizza. Are you going to come down soon? I'm like, I'm
that's what we're gonna
coming.
have tonight. I'm totally making pizza because at this point it's after 5 o'clock, and that's about all I have time.
And I'm only 3 hours ahead of you this time instead of 9. So this is really cool. It's only 8 p.m. where I'm at instead of what it would be like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, I know. Yes, no, I love it. I love having you a little bit closer. I'm not feeling like I'm keeping you up.
Just a few, and it's just 8 more weeks or so. You're going to be in my house in Berlin. I
cannot
so
wait.
excited. All right. Well, we should wrap it up. Thank you all for sticking it out, taking the ride with us this week, and we will see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.